Hello Year 3, it's Ms Emmanuel. We're looking at our writing for this week. We're going to write a newspaper article. Now you've done that before. We wrote one about, I think 6 weeks ago, all about the pugs of the frozen north. Well, there's such a lot of news around at the moment, isn't there, that we thought it'd be a great opportunity to remember how we did it last time and do another newspaper article, this time about something that's factual, something that is not a fictional event. So here's our writing journey. We're going to do in this lesson number 1 and number 2. We're going to explore a text as a reader and explore it as a writer before we move on to the writing skills, the 5 W's we're going to look at. Writing skills again, we're going to look at using inverted commas. Then we're going to plan and draft our work and finally publish it. So it's going to take a week to write our newspaper articles. Okay, we're going to start off with I can explore as a reader. Here's the newspaper article that we're going to use as our waggle, and I'll read it to you and you can follow along on screen. Hug a tree. Forest ranger, Volker Erling, and a southern poplar. The Icelandic Forest Service has issued advice to those missing hugs with their friends. Hug a tree instead. Forest rangers in the Holmastor National Forest in East Iceland are calling for those feeling lonely to get their arms around Mother Nature. When you hug a tree, you feel it first in your toes and then up your legs and into your chest and then up into your head, Forest Ranger Poor Pornson explained. It's a wonderful feeling of relaxation. However, Porfinson suggested that tree huggers should do their best to cuddle different trees rather than the first tree they see to avoid the spread of coronavirus, which can linger on surfaces. Once a good unhugged tree has been found, Porfinson said, around 5 minutes of hugging is recommended. What an interesting article, very interesting. There's just a couple of words in there I'm not sure that we will know. Linger, lovely word linger, down here near the bottom. Linger means to sort of hang around. Hang around. If you linger on a street corner, that means you're sort of hanging around. The other word I like is unhugged. You don't often come across the word unhugged. So it's the word hugged with the prefix un. That means a tree that hasn't been hugged before. Okay, so that is the recommendation from Iceland at the moment. What we're going to do now is have a little look at some questions. So exploring as a reader, I'll read through the questions. I'd like you to pause the video and then write down an answer to some of these questions. Or talk it through with someone in your family if you'd like, but you really need to think carefully about this and try and either speak about it or write it down. So number 1, who do you think might feel lonely during lockdown? Have you ever hugged a tree? If you have, how did it feel? And number 3, do you think you might like to hug a tree? Why or why not? Just pause the video and answer those questions. Interesting, isn't it? I hope you had a good go at that. So who do you think might feel lonely during a lockdown? Be lovely to take some answers from you, but I think people perhaps living on their own. Now they may be older people, they may be younger people. I have friends who live alone who are getting out and about when they can daily. I have a friend who lives up in Newcastle. She goes to do her workout on her allotment. So it's doing thinking about people who live alone, who don't have people to mix with, and people perhaps to hug, because a lot of people find a hug quite a powerful thing, don't they? Have you ever hugged a tree? If you have, how did it feel? I wonder if anybody out there has. And do you think you might like to hug a tree? Why not? There's no right or wrong answer to these questions. It's all about what you think and how you feel and how we respond to this waggle. As a reader, what does it make us think? What does it make us feel? You might think it's a good idea to hug a tree. You might want to try it, that sensation that this ranger describes. You might think it's a lovely thing to do. You might think you don't want to, because at the moment, of course, we have to be careful of what we touch when we're outside. Perhaps if you have a tree in your garden, that might be a really good thing to do, to try and hug that. So this is touching up on the idea, isn't it, that we're missing human contact. We're missing hugging people. If you're at home with your family, then you can do that, can't you? But I know that some people, my mum, for example, lives alone and she hasn't been able to hug anybody in a few weeks. So I know she finds that's one thing she finds hard, and I think I'm going to suggest she goes in the garden and hugs a tree. So that's exploring our text as a reader. Let's now think about it as a writer. Now, when we looked at the newspaper reports before, we learnt all about the key features of a newspaper report. I'd like you to think about two things here. Firstly, number one in red, the structure. How is it organised? It's a very specific way that newspaper reports are organised. They have very specific things at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. There's quite a lot you can say about that, quite a lot you can see just by looking at it, not even reading. And the second thing I'd like to think about is some of the language that's used in this newspaper report. If you can print off the newspaper article, and I've put that for you on the Google Drive, do that. And then you might like to, as we often do, label the features, so you can draw labelling lines with a nice ruler and explain the different features. If you haven't got the ability to print off, don't worry, that's not a problem. Why don't you write down a list of all the different features and then perhaps touch the screen with your finger to show exactly where those features are. Okay, so if you could pause that for now and just have a think about the different features. How did we all get on? Did you find these features? Did you find the headline, the introduction, which includes the 5 W's? Did you identify paragraphs, the picture, the caption? Did you find any inverted commas or synonyms for said? If you haven't remembered all of those and you think, oh, I'd like to just double check and see if I can find them, pause the video again. Otherwise, I'm going to show you where they all are. So we've got our headline right at the top, tells us what it's about. We've got our introduction paragraph. Often the introductory paragraph is written in bold and it's obviously right at the beginning. And that's if you're reading a newspaper and you don't know if you want to read the whole article. You might read the introduction and think, oh, that's quite interesting, I'll carry on reading. Or you might think, oh, I'm not really interested in that story, and move on to the next story. Paragraphs, we've obviously got lots of paragraphs here. There's one there. There's another one here. There's another one at the bottom. So there are 4 paragraphs in this. Oops, I put those to the picture. There are 4 paragraphs, aren't there? And then the picture. Obviously, I'm going to put my arrow from the back of the word picture. There's your picture of the actual lady hugging her tree. Caption. I wonder how many of you remembered that word. The caption is the written explanation of what's happening in the picture. So it tells you what's happening in the picture. So here it's telling us that the forest ranger is here hugging a southern poplar. Notice I'm not reading her name again. It's a very difficult name to read. Okay. So those are the main structural things, as the key things about a newspaper article. The other thing that we have to think about is the language. Now, there are inverted commas around the words that are said. So people have been interviewed for this article. They've interviewed the ranger. She's been interviewed, and this is what she says. So we can see the 66 here. We can see the 66 here, just here. You just about see that. Opening the word she says, and the sort of looks like a 99, closing it, so inverted commas, opened and closed. She says, when you hug a tree, you feel it first in your toes, then up your legs and into your chest, then up into your head. Forest ranger explained, and then she says something else. It is a wonderful feeling of relaxation, and there's your inverted commas again, opening and closing that direct speech. Synonyms for said, there are very specific ones, aren't there, for writing newspapers, so we don't say said. Things like suggested, And something else she says is explain. So suggested, explained, and then at the very end she does use the word said. So I hope you found some of those different features in your writing. So there we are. We've looked at the piece of text, our waggle, our really good example. We've thought about how we feel when we read it, what it made us think about being lonely, hugging trees, and we've looked at how, if you were writing your own, what you need to know as a writer in order to do that, looking at the structure and some of the key features of language. In the next lesson, we're going to look at writing skills, to rehearse some of our skills, and we're going to look at the 5 W's. And my challenge for you in preparation for tomorrow's lesson is try to remember what the 5 W's are. Okay, well done, Year 3. On that note, I shall leave it there. See you soon.